midsize car was still pretty undefined in the early 1960s, as brands tried to expand into new markets. AMC's Rambler Classic could arguably be considered the first American midsize car. In 1961, it was on a 108-inch wheelbase, was 190 inches long, and weighed 2,900 to 3,400 pounds. Engines included a 3.2-liter 196 cubic inch inline six with 127 to 138 horsepower, and a 4.1-liter 250 cubic inch V8 with 200 to 215 horsepower. The top V8 had 260 pound-feet of torque for a top speed over 115 miles an hour, an 8.5 second 0 to 60, and a quarter mile under 17 seconds. Priced $2,100 to $2,900. Sales were just under $225,000 for the year. Although Ford's Fairlane of 1962 is generally considered to be the first true American midsize. Fitting between the Galaxy and the Falcon, it had a 116-inch wheelbase, was 198 inches long, weighing 2,800 to 3,000 pounds. Priced between $2,200 and $2,400, with a base 2.8-liter 170 cubic inch 101 horsepower 6, or a 3.6-liter 221 cubic inch V8 with 145 horsepower, or 260 cubic inch with 164 horsepower. The small V8 produced 216 pound-feet of torque, did an 18.5 second quarter mile, and topped out just over 100 miles an hour. GM seriously entered the midsize market with the Chevrolet Chevelle in 1964. It used a 115-inch wheelbase, was 194 inches long, and weighed 2,800 to 3,400 pounds, costing $2,200 to $2,900, with either a 3.2-liter 194 cubic inch 120 horsepower, or 3.8-liter 230 cubic inch 140 to 155 horsepower straight six, or a 4.6-liter 283 cubic inch 195 to 220 horsepower, or 5.4-liter 327 cubic inch 250 to 300 horsepower V8. The 220 horsepower, 295 pound-foot of torque 283 could nearly reach 120 miles an hour, got to 60 in 7.5 seconds, and did the quarter mile in under 16. The new B-body Dodges of 1962 were marketed as full-size, but fit between the bigger Custom 880 and the compact Lancer, and they were only on a 116-inch wheelbase, were 202 to 210 inches long, and weighed 3,000 to 3,500 pounds. Priced from $2,200 to $3,100, sales were disappointing at $145,000. Base engine was the 3.7-liter 225 cubic inch slant 6 with 145 horsepower, with V8s of 5.2 liters 318 cubic inches, 5.9 liters 361 cubic inches, 6.3 liters 383 cubic inches, or 6.8 liters and 413 cubic inches, with horsepower ranging from 230 to 415. The 318 Power Pack had 260 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque for a sub-8 second 0 to 60, sub-16 second quarter mile, and a top speed of 115. Mercury's short-lived Meteor of 1962 was on a 117-inch wheelbase and 204 inches long, weighing 3,000 pounds. Priced from $2,300 to $2,500, and using a 2.8-liter 170 cubic inch 6 with 101 horsepower, or a 3.6-liter 221 cubic inch 145 horsepower, or 4.3-liter 260 cubic inch 164 horsepower 264 pound-foot of torque V8. The bigger V8 could do 60 under 10 seconds, the quarter mile in the mid-17s, and reach nearly 105 miles an hour. For 1964, the Pontiac Tempest Le Mans was up to a 115-inch wheelbase, was 205 inches long, cost $2,300 to $2,800, and weighed 2,900 to 3,300 pounds. Base engine was a 3.5-liter 215 cubic inch straight 6 with 140 horsepower, with an optional 5.3-liter 326 cubic inch V8 that had 250 to 280 horsepower. Of course, that's not including the GTO's 235 horsepower Tri-Power 389. A Le Mans Sport Coupe with 280 horsepower and 355 pound-feet of torque did 60 in a little over 6.5 seconds, the quarter mile in the low 15s, and could top 120. The 1964 Oldsmobile F85 Cutlass cost $2,300 to $3,300, weighed 3,000 to 3,800 pounds, on the same 115-inch wheelbase, and 203-inch length, The F-85 started with a 155 horsepower 3.7 liter 225 cubic inch V6, but the Cutlass used a 5.4 liter 330 cubic inch V8 with 230 to 290 horsepower, or 310 horsepower in the 442. The 4-speed Holiday Coupe with 260 horsepower and 335 pound-feet of torque was quicker than the more powerful automatic-only Jetaway, with a 0 to 60 of just over 7 seconds, a high 15-second quarter mile, and a top speed of 120. Buick's Special Skylark of 1964 was 3,000 to 3,700 pounds, cost $2,300 to $3,300. Also on the 115-inch wheelbase, except the wagon, the 3.7 liter 225 cubic inch V6 had 155 horsepower, while the 4.9 liter 300 cubic inch V8 had 210 to 250 horsepower. The top sport coupe had 250 horsepower and 352 pound-feet of torque for 60 under 7 seconds, a 15.5 second quarter mile, and a top speed over 120. From Britain, you could get a Vauxhall Victor FB series on a 100-inch wheelbase. It was 173 inches long, initially with a 50 to 71 horsepower 1.5 liter, but later models had a more powerful 1.6 liter. Priced at 800 pounds, a 1500 Super was tested at speeds over 75 miles an hour, did 60 in about 22.5 seconds, and got 27 miles per gallon. The Hillman Minx Series 5 of 1963 to 65 was available with an easy drive automatic. It was 162 inches long on a 96-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,200 pounds. The 1.6 liter inline 4 had 57 horsepower and 87 pound-feet of torque, moving it to 80 miles an hour through the quarter mile in 21.5 seconds and to 60 in 19.5. The Singer Gazelle Series 5 of 1963 was 164 inches long on a 96-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,300 pounds. Prices started around 1,000 pounds. It got 27 miles per gallon, and the 1600cc engine produced 57 horsepower and 87 pound-feet of torque, for a top speed of 80 and a 0 to 60 just over 20 seconds. Wolseley introduced the 1660 for 1961, and nearly 65,000 were made over the next 10 years. It had a 99-inch wheelbase and was 178 inches long. The 1.6 liter made 59 horsepower, moved the car to 60 in less than 21.5 seconds, and it could exceed 80. The Austin Cambridge of 1961 used a 100-inch wheelbase, was 175 inches long, and weighed 2,500 pounds. In addition to a 1.5 liter diesel, there was a 1.6 liter petrol engine with 61 horsepower and 90 pound-feet of torque. It could nearly reach 85, hit 60 in 18.5 seconds, and did the quarter mile in just over 21 seconds. While the Morris Oxford of 1961 was also on a 100-inch wheelbase and 175 inches long, weighing 2,400 pounds. With the same 1.6 liter, 61 horsepower, 90 pound-foot of torque engine, with essentially identical performance. Ford's Cortina was on a 98-inch wheelbase and was 168 inches long, and weighed 1,700 to 2,000 pounds. It started with a 1.2 liter inline 4 with 53 horsepower and 66 pound-feet of torque, soon to be followed by a 1.5 liter with 78 horsepower and 91 pound-feet of torque. A GT could do better than 90 miles an hour, got to 60 in just over 12 seconds, and can do the quarter mile in the high 18s. Standard made nearly 10,000 of the Vanguard 6 from 1960 to 1963. It had a 102-inch wheelbase and was 172 inches long, weighing 2,700 to 3,100 pounds. Its 2-liter had 85 horsepower and 107 pound-feet of torque, could almost do 90, did the quarter mile in 20 seconds, and got 25 miles per gallon. The Hummer Scepter of 1963 had 86 horsepower and 97 pound-feet of torque from its 1.6 liter inline 4. It was 166 inches long on a 101-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,500 pounds. It could nearly reach 95 miles an hour, got to 60 in 14.5 seconds, and did the quarter mile in under 20. Daimler's 2.5 V8 for 1963 was on a 108-inch wheelbase, was 181 inches long, and weighed 3,000 pounds, costing 1,600 pounds, and got 16 miles per gallon. It could easily do 105 miles an hour, 60 under 13 seconds, and the quarter mile in 19. with the 156 cubic inch engine pumping out 140 horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque. The earlier but similar Jaguar Mark II had a 107-inch wheelbase, was 181 inches long, and weighed over 3,200 pounds. The straight six came in 120 horsepower 2.5 liter, 210 horsepower 3.4 liter, and 220 horsepower 3.8 liter versions. In top form, it could do 122 miles an hour, get to 60 in under 8 seconds, and do the quarter mile in the low 16s. In France, Renault had the 8, or R8, in 1962. It was on an 89-inch wheelbase, was 158 inches long, and weighed 1,600 pounds. The 1-liter inline-4 had 47 horsepower and 55 pound-feet of torque, moving the car to 80 miles an hour, to 60 in 19.5 seconds, and the quarter mile in 21.5. While the Panhard PL17 was on a 101-inch wheelbase, was 180 inches long, and weighed 1,800 pounds. The 850cc air-cooled flat twin was offered in tunes ranging from 42 to 60 horsepower. Top speed was nearly 85, but 60 took 21.5 seconds, and the quarter mile less than 22.5. In Germany, Borgward had the Lloyd Arabella, falling somewhere in the middle of its lineup. On an 87-inch wheelbase, it was 150 inches long and weighed 1,600 pounds, powered by a 900cc Boxer 4. Available with 38 to 44 horsepower, it could exceed 80 miles an hour, get to 60 in under 19 seconds, and do the quarter mile in not much over 21 seconds. The Wartburg 311 was a relatively larger 169 inches long, on a 97-inch wheelbase and weighing 2,000 pounds, while powered by a 1-liter inline-3 with 44 horsepower and 69 pound-feet of torque, for a top speed just under 80. Volkswagen's Type 3 was a step up from the Beetle, initially in two-door notchback sedan or squareback wagon. On a 95-inch wheelbase, it was 166 inches long and 1,900 pounds, using a 1.5-liter low-profile or pancake version of Volkswagen's Flat 4, with 44 horsepower or a 53-horsepower S version. The Ford Taunus P3 ran from 1960 to 1964 on a 104-inch wheelbase. It was 175 to 178 inches long and weighing between 2,100 and 2,200 pounds, with either a 1.5-liter with 59 horsepower and 83 pound-feet of torque, or a 1.7-liter with 66 horsepower and 97 pound-feet of torque. Top speed was near 85, 60 took 15.5 seconds, and the quarter mile 20. The Opel Rekord P2 would now fit above the Kadett. It was also 178 inches long on a 104-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,100 to 2,200 pounds, with a similar 1.5-liter with 62 horsepower and 81 pound-feet of torque, or a 1.7-liter with 67 to 74 horsepower. It could do nearly 90, got to 60 in under 15.5 seconds, and did the quarter mile in 20. BMW introduced the new Class 1500 in 1962. On a 100-inch wheelbase, it was 177 inches long and weighed 2,300 pounds. The inline-4 produced 89 horsepower and 97 pound-feet of torque, moving the car to 95 miles an hour, to 60 in 13 seconds, and the quarter mile in 19. The Mercedes-Benz 220 was 192 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase and just over 2,900 pounds. Tunes came in 105 horsepower, 133 pound-feet of torque, 124 horsepower, 139 pound-feet of torque, and 134 horsepower, 152 pound-feet of torque. A 220 SE could reach speeds around 105 miles an hour, 60 in 10.5 seconds, and the quarter mile in under 18. In Italy, the Lancia Fulvia of 1963 was on a 98-inch wheelbase, 162 inches long, and 2,300 pounds, powered by an 1100cc V4 with 57 horsepower and 61 pound-feet of torque. It could do 85 miles an hour, 60 in 19.5 seconds, and the quarter mile in just over 21. Fiat's medium offering came in 1,300 and 1,500, with 60 or 73 horsepower. Wheelbase was 96 to 99 inches, length 159 to 163, and weight around 2,100 pounds. The more powerful versions could exceed 90, got to 60 in just over 14 seconds, and did the quarter mile in 19.5. The Alfa Romeo Giulia of 1963 was on a 99-inch wheelbase, was 163 inches long and 2,200 to 2,500 pounds. With a 1600 inline 4 with 105 horsepower and 101 pound-feet of torque, it could do 60 in 11.5 seconds, a low 18-second quarter mile, and a top speed over 105. There was the Volvo Amazon from Sweden. It was on a 102-inch wheelbase, was 173 inches long and 2,400 pounds. Early models had a 74 horsepower, 101 pound-feet of torque 1.6 liter, but a bigger 99 horsepower, 108 pound-feet of torque 1.8 liter became available in 1961. A 122S could do better than 90 miles an hour, and a 0 to 60 in the mid-14s. The Czechs had the Skoda 1202, which only came as a wagon. It used a 1.2-liter inline 4 with 46 horsepower and 63 pound-feet of torque, was 177 inches long on a 106-inch wheelbase, and was 2,400 pounds. It could do a little over 65 miles an hour, and the quarter mile took about 23.5 seconds. While the Soviet Gaz-21 Volga second series ran until 1962. The 3,000-pound car used a 2.4-liter with 64 to 79 horsepower and 114 to 131 pound-feet of torque. Top speed was between 75 and 80 miles an hour, with the export models being the quickest, at just over 22 seconds for the quarter mile. Australia's E.J. Holdens of 1962 were on a 105-inch wheelbase, were 177 inches long, and 2,500 to 2,700 pounds. With a 2.3-liter inline 6 with 75 horsepower and 120 pound-feet of torque, they could do 80 miles an hour and a 23-second quarter mile. From Japan, you could get a Prince Skyline 1500 for 1963. It was 161 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase and 2,100 pounds, with nearly 115,000 being sold over 6 years. With 69 horsepower and 83 pound-feet of torque, it could exceed 80 miles an hour, took just over 16 seconds to reach 60, and just over 20 to do the quarter mile. The Toyo Pet Corona, or Toyota Tierra, of 1960 to 64 was on a 95-inch wheelbase, was 157 inches long, and weighed 2,100 to 2,200 pounds. Initially with a 1-liter with 45 horsepower, but soon a 1.6-liter with 60 to 75 horsepower and 83 pound-feet of torque, and then a 1.9-liter with 89 to 105 pound-feet of torque were offered. In 1961, a U.S. model was tested at $1,600, did a 20.7-second 0 to 60, 21.6-second quarter mile, and got 22 to 28 miles per gallon, and had a top speed of 70 miles an hour. While the Isuzu Balel was on a 100-inch wheelbase, was 176 inches long, and 2,600 pounds, offered with an 82 horsepower and 83 pound-feet of torque 1500, or an 84 horsepower, 111 pound-feet of torque 2000 cc engine. It had a top speed near 90, with a mid-15-second 0 to 60, and a quarter mile just over 20. It probably should have been in my big car video for the period, but was still considered quite tiny by American standards. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.